The cold of the basement nips at his flesh, and Christopher stirs silently alongside of Mary's now cold body. He rubs his face against her skin, unaware of the horrors to await him. Footsteps heading towards him, methodical and deliberate, and getting closer. Christopher feels eyes on him, and as he begins to stir, he has a sudden realization that he is naked and sits up looking towards the door where an office clerk stands in shock, his skin pale and eyes wide. What the... The man's voice trails off and Christopher jumps to his feet, trying to cover himself and make some sense of the situation he now finds himself in. He turns towards the table, and Mary's lifeless gaze stares blankly back into his. Christopher, in shock, steps away from the table. The pool of blood dripping from it seems to echo in his mind as he struggles to connect even the most basic of thoughts. The world starts to spin. The room flickers, and all edges seem to blur into one mass of colour and shadows. In those shadows, there was movement all around him. He looks from Mary to the door, and the man, now gone, screams down the hall for help. Christopher looks at his hands. They are as blood-soaked as the rest of his body, and the mechanical pulse of the plant loudens, and his knees grow weak as the shadows all move towards his falling body. Then there is darkness. Cold water blasts his every pore, and he slips, falling back to the wall behind him. Bright lights and more water gushes as he is again blasted with a hose. The water, mixed with blood, pours from his body and makes the floor look like red marble. The confusion in his mind grows and grows as he tries to remember what had happened and where he was. "Clean up, come on," the voice from beyond the hose screams out at him. Christopher nods and cleans himself with a single bar of soap that sits on a shelf against the wall. The water makes every inch of Christopher's body shiver and retract as it hits his flesh. Mary now comes into his mind. She's standing there with him, naked and inviting. She reaches out and touches his face. He can feel her warmth. The world again seems to fall into static, and the walls shimmer and fade until again there is darkness. This time Mary was there with him, arms wrapped around his body, and the mechanical pulse of the plant radiating through the nothingness that surrounds them. In the darkness, Mary holds Christopher's head in her hands, leans up, and gently kisses his lips. His mind races, and after struggling to control his thoughts, he gives in and just stands there, holding Mary in his arms. It's peaceful for a moment, and he has completely forgotten about the world and past events. Mary rests her head on his chest. Her rhythmic breathing seems to hypnotize him, and the water pours over his face. Christopher turns his head away from the water, to no avail. The water pours down his face, and he struggles to breathe as it makes its way into his nose and mouth. Christopher struggles and pushes away from Mary, wiping at his face violently in an attempt to breathe. As he pushes her away, the water suddenly stops, and he coughs as he wipes the water from his face and spits it from his mouth. Mary stands naked in front of him, and as he pulls his eyes upwards to hers, he in horror realizes that although she's standing with him, arms outreached towards him, she is undoubtedly dead. Her hollowed-out eye sockets, adorned with 2 silver buttons, stare blankly in his direction, and the wound to her neck makes a horrific smile as she moves towards him. "Tell her we said hello." Gus's voice echoes through his mind, and again the world goes black. Clarissa sits in Dr. Stevens' office, silently waiting his arrival. She looks over the room, and her hands tremble as she hears him approaching the door. Stepping into the office, Dr. Stevens greets her with a smile and a handshake. "Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today." Clarissa nods and replies, "No thanks necessary, but I'm not sure how I can be of any help." She eyes the files that the doctor moves around on his desk, and as he flips through them, a picture of Christopher is momentarily seen, making her heart skip a beat. I don't know why he did any of this." She pauses and the doctor looks up from his paperwork. "I swear I don't know. He was normal, completely normal. I mean, he regularly didn't sleep well, but I mean, who does all the time?" Dr. Stevens motions for her to pause for a moment and smiles softly from across the desk. "Clarissa, no one is blaming you for any of this. We know that you didn't have anything to do with it." He closes the files and takes a drink of his coffee. He hasn't said a word in the 3 months he's been here. Not one. He doesn't eat. We have to feed him with a feeding tube. Dr. Stevens sighs and leans back in his chair. "Listen, her family wants answers. Hell, they deserve something. But I'm his doctor, not his judge." He stands up and picks up a small paper pamphlet from the top of a bookcase and hands it across the table to Clarissa. "I want to transfer him to Belton Abbey. It's still a government-run institution, and he will still be under guard until it is determined if he will stand trial for the things that he's done." He sits back down and motions for her to open the pamphlet before continuing. "I think it would be better for him to make progress there. There are less patients, he will get my undivided attention, and with your help, maybe we can break through whatever this is that has frozen him in place." Clarissa looks up from the pamphlet for Belton Abbey. "You think he will get back to normal?" She pushes her hair back from her face. "I don't know what I could have done differently." Her voice fades off and she sits silently for a moment. "This place, you think it's a better facility?" Dr. Stevens smiles and nods, sliding her paperwork across the desk. "All we need is your signature. You're his wife, and regardless of the things he's done, you are the one that the responsibility falls back on for his care in this time, since he cannot care for himself. He will still be a ward of the state, but your opinion and cooperation will be crucial to his healing and getting back to at least some form of normality." Clarissa nods and scribbles her signature on the papers, then slides them back across the desk. "When will he be transferred?" she questions. Dr. Stevens folds the papers back into the folder from which they'd come and taps it on the desk softly. "I'd say that they would transfer him tomorrow morning or a day after, at the latest." Hey fearsome friends, thanks for listening. Please make sure you subscribe and click that notification button so you can be aware of all my videos when they upload. If you have a story that you'd like to hear me record, then please send it to my subreddit, Miss FearSoMe83, or alternatively email me at missfearsome83@hotmail.com. If you'd also like to support me further, please go to my Patreon and join for as little as $1 a month, where you'll get early access to all my recordings, and they will also be available as MP3 downloads. I also have some awesome merch on the Spreadshirt website. All links are in the description below. Stay safe, stay happy, and remember, keep being creepy.